You're tuned into 88.7 FM WRHU. I'm Antonio Schoenhardt, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Andy Bozzo, who is a California battalion chief and a co-founder of Tablet Command, which is an incident response and management software solution that's currently being used by 1,100 plus fire departments and 40,000 plus first responders throughout both the United States and Canada. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was a great introduction and a great description of our product. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you so much. And so, Andrew, let's get right into it. You're a firefighter, you're out there in Los Angeles. And for the people who may not understand, especially our viewers all the way out here in New York, where these types of wildfires aren't that common, can you explain what has been going on over the last week and a half, just from your perspective, maybe any stories that you have?
Yeah, so technically, I'm a firefighter in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our software is deployed in fire departments up and down the state of California, as well as all around the United States. But I'm currently serving as a battalion chief in a large county department in the San Francisco Bay Area. But we do have what are called strike teams that are down in Los Angeles right now. California, unlike many other portions of the United States or the world, has a very interesting master mutual aid system. So when, for example, the Los Angeles Fire Department or LA County, which is 6 hours away from us or 5 hours away from us, needs help, whether it's because of structural collapse from an earthquake or it's floods or it's the predominant thing in California, which are wildfires, they can go through the California Master Mutual Aid System through the state capitol up in Sacramento, make the appropriate requests, and we can mobilize and we can put people on engines right away. And they return the favor as well. For example, a couple summers ago, we had the Caldor fire, which is in, the very beautiful and historic Lake Tahoe. Maybe some of your listeners recognize Lake Tahoe from The Godfather 2. That was featured prominently in that movie. Well, the entire lake was pretty much on fire during the Calder fire, and I was part of a strike team as an engine captain at the time. I was in charge of defending structures in South Lake Tahoe as the fire encroached on those structures, and then we shifted into a little bit more offensive operations in terms of hiking into the woods and securing fire line, digging fire line, putting hot spots out, coordinating with aircraft. So we have a unique fire problem in the Western United States. And being a firefighter in the Western United States is very unique in that you could be a San Francisco firefighter, or a Los Angeles firefighter, or a county firefighter like myself, and be 5, 6, 7, 8 stories up on an apartment fire, even higher in some of the, parts of Los Angeles with very high rises. You could be on a high rise fire at one portion of the day, get down to the lobby, get toned out for a wildland fire in your vicinity, put on wildland gear and go to work, hiking up the side of a mountain or driving through neighborhoods, following the front of the fire, putting out roof fires as the fire passes through. Where we are positioned sort of geographically and topographically, we suffer from time to time from these wind events. We call them wind events because they come up periodically. Generally, from a climate standpoint, our most active wind events tend to be August, September, October, November, but they've been lately pushing later and later and later into the year. And I've been on the job for about 27 years, and I have never seen a wind event like this in January, where you had 60 to 70 mile an hour sustained winds. So think about that for your listeners. Drive down the freeway at 60 miles an hour, just 60. Don't even speed. Go 60. Unroll the window and stick your hand out the window. And that's what the sustained winds. Now, light a house on fire with sustained winds of 60 miles per hour, and then see how well that neighborhood does. It's nearly an impossible firefight. I don't care if you have 50,000 firefighters, 10,000 firefighters, 5,000 firefighters. It's really hard to stop a fire that's being pushed by 60 to 70 mile an hour sustained winds with nearly 100-mile-an-hour gusts. So so I'm a battalion chief now. I've been on the job 27 years. I work in the San Francisco Bay Area. We help each other out in California. And right now, what's happening in Los Angeles, which is south of us, has, been one of the most, if not the most devastating things that I've seen in my career.
And I like how you mentioned you brought up these wins, and that's what my next question was actually going to be focused on. There's two things to hear. First of all, it's not even fire season, right? It's not wildfire season out in California right now. And second of all, like you just mentioned, these 50, 60 mile per hour winds. In your experience, have you seen anything like this ever? And do you think that this is, a one and done type thing, or are fire battalions and fire companies out there in the entirety of California prepping for this moving into the future?
Yeah, that's the latter. It's 100% not one and done. This is going to go on. You're going to see more events like this. I was just listening to a podcast earlier today with the Orange County Fire Authority chief saying that back in the day in the 80s, he was he would see things that were 3,000 acres and, they'd lose 30 homes, 300 homes, and think that that was unprecedented and that that would never, ever happen again in his career. And now that's kind of like a shoulder shrug. It's sort of a meh, well, okay, that's this week. That's Tuesday. What's going to happen on Wednesday? So there's no question that this event in Los Angeles will be historic, but it will not, and I'll reemphasize, it will not be the last one that we see like this. I've been on fires that have been wind-driven fires down in the Los Angeles area, in Los Angeles County, on strike teams. I've been on fires. I was on the wine country fires. And when you roll into a division and your division supervisor looks at you and your strike team wide-eyed and says, you guys need to hold the fire at this road or we're going to lose this entire town. That's a pretty compelling moment. And when you're sitting there dealing with, 40, 50 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour sustained winds, trying to pick up any hot spots, trying to put out, house fires along the road that are going to throw ember cast across your fire lines, that's a lot of pressure. And, but once these things get heads of steam and they're driven by the wind, they're really, really hard to stop. I've had several wind-driven fires in my career where you try to pick your most advantageous location to keep fire out of a neighborhood, to keep it out of a particularly prone geographic area where it's going to accelerate, like in saddles, a saddle or a gully where there's a lot of brush. That if the fire gets into that, it's going to build even more momentum. And so you want to stop that. But it's really challenging when you have embers that can spot even miles away from the front of the fire because of the heat rising so fast into the atmosphere and the wind pushing it, well ahead of itself. This dry, hot air that is basically cultivating these embers and throwing them, spitting them out a mile ahead of the actual main fire front. It becomes really challenging. It becomes a game of whack-a-mole, basically.
And as you're saying, there are so many obstacles, so many hurdles that you have to jump when not only battling fires, but fires of this severity. And so my next question is going to be more based on tablet command, which we brought up a little
Mm-hmm.
bit earlier, the groundbreaking management software. How is it being implemented in the, between all the firefighters that are currently fighting these Los Angeles fires, and how does it help manage the fires?
So it's an incident management platform. It also helps firefighters locate vehicles that are around them, meaning fire apparatus. So, for example, when I was on the Calder fire in Tahoe, I knew that I had LA City and LA County engines around me based on looking at tablet command and knowing that, if we were working on one portion of the fire, they were tying another portion of that fire to us so we could tie those fire lines together. And that was really helpful, having that situational awareness through a feature called AVL, or automatic vehicle location. So if you zoom in on a map right now in the Los Angeles area, you will see clusters of fire engines from all over the country in different portions of the fire, or different neighborhoods posted up working on those portions of the fire. So from a mapping standpoint, it's being used by the entirety of our customer base, for just mapping and navigation, and orientation as to what other fire companies are doing nearby. As a management platform, we have several strike teams down there. A strike team is one battalion chief with 5 engines. And so many battalion chiefs have anecdotally reported back to us that for their portion of the fire, they're tracking their strike team on tablet commands. And then, we have the mapping portion from a fire map standpoint, in terms of, what portions of the fire are uncontrolled, what portions are controlled, and the corresponding maps that reflect things like bulldozer lines, geographic landmarks where you can maybe gain an advantage on the fire, places you don't want to be. So it's being used in several capacities, by our customers that are on that fire. And, we have hundreds of customers on that fire. So it's definitely, been a game changer as an incident management tool, for the fire service in general.
And in terms of being a game changer, how did the idea for the software come about? And how what minds got together to be like, hey, we got to make something so that it could be easier for all of us to work together and be more effective at our jobs.
That's a great question. We're talking about tablet command right now in the context of Western wildfires. And the one thing I want to get across to your listeners, especially because you're in the New York metropolitan area, is that this was actually born out of a structure fire tragedy. And this is just as much of a high rise and major urban disaster tool as it is, a wildfire tool. In fact, the beauty of tablet command is it's so simple to use that its wheelhouse are small scale, as we call maybe type 4 and type 3 incidents, which are just single alarm and multiple alarm structure fires. So a row house in Brooklyn is just as easily managed on tablet command as a multi-alarm, multi-resource, 1,000-acre wildfire. They're in our eyes, they're one and the same. It's where are you placing your resources? What are they doing? How long have they been in there? Who's on that resource? And then when is it appropriate for us to change tactics? So how was tablet command born, you asked? In my fire department, we're a county fire department, and different portions of our county are very rural and very beautiful and bucolic, with trees and hills and, homes and subdivisions scattered amongst that. And then there are portions of this district that are very, very urban, with homes, 3 and 4 feet apart from each other, row homes, homes stacked up on hillside, very reflective of the San Francisco Bay Area. And in that urban portion of our county fire department, we had a 900 square foot house, as part of a big urban neighborhood that caught fire in the middle of the night. Very common. We get about 2 or 3, as you guys would say, jobs a day, 2 or 3 fires a day in our county. And this came in as a fire alarm in 2007 on July 21st. We call it the Michelle Drive incident. We had a call out for a fire alarm. And the standard practice back then was to send one engine to check out the fire alarm. So a residential fire alarm came in the middle of the night, and about a half a block out, our guys realized that there was a column of smoke coming from that neighborhood and that they needed to fill out the box or complete the alarm assignment and fill it out with a first alarm structure fire assignment. I apologize for the radio chatter in the background here. So they get there and they find out one engine company gets there first, and they're followed by, four additional engine companies and a truck and a couple BCs, but they're delayed because this came in as a fire alarm instead of a residential structure fire. And they find out that two elderly people are trapped inside of this structure. They go in to attempt the rescue. They successfully get one grab and pull that victim out, put them on the front lawn, and dive back into the structure. The captain and the firefighter, because we're only 3-0 staffing on our engines out here, a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter. They go back in for the second victim. The fire flashed over, and at the end of the day, 2 civilians and 2 firefighters died in the line of duty, and this was in 2007. What many of your fire listeners will understand is that after that, usually an OSHA report, OSHA investigation comes out, and a NIOSH report, National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, will publish a report about what went wrong, and they'll come out with recommendations. Well, we were subject to about 115 recommendations, and about 30 of those had to do with communications and incident command, and lack of accountability on that fire, meaning lack of an ability to track what your firefighters are doing and where they're doing it during the fire. We didn't really have a good incident command structure at that portion, or we didn't deploy it in an effective way. That's not to say that would have prevented their deaths, but it was a stark reminder for us. So we started arguing at the county level as to whether we should use Velcro tags, to tag in and tag out of these fires as we go in, or these, fobs or like name tags. And so I was asked to do a presentation from a previous experience I had with a different fire department in terms of how they were doing accountability. I was playing words with friends while I was thinking about that presentation. For your listeners that don't know what Words with Friends is, it's an online Scrabble game that I was playing on my iPhone, where you can tap on a letter tile and drag it onto the Scrabble board. And in my mind, that letter tile was an engine company. And the Scrabble board suddenly came to life for me as like a fire. And so it just dawned on me that I was playing this game against somebody that was in some other portion of the country or the world. So I thought to myself, why can't I send Division 5, the battalion chief on the 5th floor of a center hallway apartment, fire? Why can't I send them silently 3 units, 3 tiles, if you will? They see that, or they get a notification, and now they know who their resources are on that division. And so I was thinking about it actually in sort of the mid-rise, high-rise context, but immediately that washed over into the wildland fire context as well, where we division up fires all the time to make it, we take these big fires and we chop them up into manageable portions. The same is true in a warehouse. You take a big warehouse fire and you chop it up into manageable portions, and you put somebody in charge of each one of those portions. Well, the challenge becomes, who's working for who, because you got all these firefighters that are coming into the scene. They're all charged up. They all want to go to work. They all want a job. They all want the opportunity to make an impact on the fire, but they need a boss. And that boss needs to know who they're getting so that they can effectively manage that portion of the fire. And prior to tablet command, that was all done on pencil and paper or whiteboards and things that really couldn't get memorialized. And it didn't have this rich imagery and mapping and drone feeds and all these other things. So, I conceptualized this idea. I put it on paper. I wrote up a concept report. And then about half a month, maybe a month or 2 later, I reached out to a friend of mine that I had been working on another project with, who had expertise in technology. And I point blank asked him, hey, do you think this concept is worthy? He said he thought it was brilliant. But I said, my challenge is I don't know how to move these butcher paper drawings onto a software platform, and you do. And so we decided that at that moment to form a company. We raised money. We put the first iteration of this on the App Store. We got some great feedback, and today now we're in about 1,100 plus fire departments around the United States and Canada, large metro areas like Denver, Charlotte, North Carolina, Florida, Kentucky, Colorado, California, Washington State, Texas. We're starting to, be a major presence in these metropolitan fire departments all around the United States, and we are becoming the de facto CAD integrated real-time incident command solution. So that's kind of a long story, but that's how
It's
we
fantastic
began.
though. It started off, you were playing like an online Scrabble and you turned, a game concept, right, into a concept that can actually help, in the end of it all, save lives. So
Absolutely.
that's the beauty of it. And I can't, wow, just hearing that, I was sitting here and I was like, oh wow, that is that's just fantastic stuff. And so my last question before letting you go. I want to talk about the future, what's looking like in the future here for these Los Angeles fires. What is, when everything's all said and done and it's time to rebuild and restructure, do you know of any, what's the best way I could say this? Do you know of any plans that would be put in place to hopefully try to avoid this happening next year or the following year or anything like this to the capacity and this, such a big scope fire like this? Are there any plans in place to help prevent that down the line?
So I think, most immediately we're going to focus on reaction and how do we react to a red flag warning that comes out a week before. We already did, excuse me, we already did a number of pre-positioned apparatus and spinning up of resources prior to, in reaction to this warning that these winds were going to be high. So we're going to probably take a look at the ability to access even more resources for events like this. The one thing we can't control is the weather. I think there's some billionaires that might claim that they can control the weather, but I don't buy it. These events are going to continue to happen. So we need to focus as a fire service on controlling the controllables. And what we can control are how we react to these events. Can we do more in the way of prescriptions in terms of home hardening? What can you do to harden your home against an event like this, knowing that an event like this is around the corner? It will happen again. So is your home able to withstand it? If the answer is no, then do you have a plan? Do you have an evacuation plan? Do you have good evacuation routes? Do you have a good communications plan with your family? And on our end in the fire service, do we have plans? Do we have technologies in place like tablet command where we can look at our resource allocation packages on a map and juxtapose that with concentrations of heat and redirect resources that way? Do we have good visibility in terms of the progress of the fire through aerial footage or through aerial reports and accurate mapping? So there's a number to kind of generally answer your question. There are a number of different initiatives that are going to be discussed and I got to imagine put into action, very soon with regard to the firefighting efforts and what we do organizationally as mutual aid organizations of California and beyond, and then from the citizen end of things to how do they rebuild according to certain codes, according to certain legislation that gets in place, so that when the next fire passes through, which it will your home be able to take that punch? Will you be able to get out of harm's way in the meantime? And will there be adequate resources to respond to that? So, there's a lot that's going to happen. We thought January would be a downtime to do things like service our apparatus, look at, the upcoming fire season, look at, fuel moistures and things like that. But, fire season in California now truly is year round. And this event is a sentinel event to, to, uh, to, to state that in no short order. So, we'll look at how we can even further deploy resources in even greater anticipation of these events being catastrophic. So that's my, initial answer, and a lot is going to happen in probably the next 30 days with regard to, the Office of Emergency Services and, locally here with fire departments and regional fire chiefs striking agreements and looking at, early warning systems for even the hint of a wind event like this and being ready.
Well, Andrew, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me and speak about just some fascinating stuff that you, as well as so many other firefighters, are doing right now to help not only save lives, but put out a very, very beast of a fire.
Yeah, this was a one of a kind. It was an absolute monster. You're not going to be able to get in front of it. So what we focused on during this fire and all the other fires that I've been on that have been wind driven like this have been life priority, and getting the citizens out and then going back and doing our best to defend their homes, when we can. But, it's okay to say that sometimes nature gets the best of us. And, Mother Nature in this case had the upper hand. This was the Mike Tyson of storms, of firestorms. And there's not a lot that you're going to do, with a Mike Tyson uppercut when he was at his best. And it was the same here. We took a real uppercut. Nonetheless, you're hearing about some of the fatalities, but what you haven't heard about are all the people that got scooped up onto fire engines or thrown in the back of a battalion chief's rig and driven out of harm's way. For every fatality, I got to think that there were tens, dozens and dozens of folks' lives that were saved, with the fire department inserting themselves into those areas of danger and getting those citizens out. And so we're going to see more and more of this. This problem isn't getting smaller, it's getting bigger. You're going to see it on the East Coast in the way of, hurricanes and floods. And we see it on the West Coast, in a number of different ways. And in the end, they're all the same management structure, so they benefit from these management technologies and this elevated situational awareness. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about two things that I'm really passionate about: being a firefighter, and the profession of firefighting, which I'm incredibly passionate about, and this software that has saved lives and will continue to save lives.
Andrew, thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you so much for hosting me. It was a real honor and a pleasure. Thank you.